It's almost a given. The second one is a little different. We heard from right off the bat that, okay, we're talking about need. We probably have enough agencies in our community already to meet most of the needs. The problem is that people don't know about them. The people don't know how to access them. The people don't know how to qualify for the service that they provide. There needs to be systematic educational programs in terms of providing information about programs that already exist. And this just consistently came up time and time again every time we talked about any one of these topics. I'm going to run through, for each one of these, we have a little bit of data at the beginning to give a flavor. I'm going to run through these pretty quick, but there's a story here that's important. We have 4 indicators that are generally used for educational data, information. One is high school dropouts. As you look at that graph, you see that both Mecklenburg County and United Way region, that number is declining, some. High school graduation rate. Now you have to look real close at this one to find out that it's increasing a little bit. A very little bit, but increasing for both in the last few years. This is student achievement. Percent of students at or above grade level, and this is a combination of 3rd and 8th grade test scores. Again, if you look at that, there is an improvement. Not marked, but some improvement. The lowest achievement scores in this region are found in Anson County, and they are substantially lower than the other counties. The highest achievement scores in this county, in this region, are found in Union County, no surprise there, and Mooresville City Graded School District. That is a surprise. That was a district that primarily catered to mill families for years. All of a sudden, it's at the top of the list. In fact, on some of the achievement information, Mooresville City Graded School District is hitting along at 90% of people at the required level. So the other thing that is one of the most remarkable changes that I've seen in a lot of years that I've been here is that when I moved here in 1970, you found almost nobody ever talking about leaving Mecklenburg County to go to the next county if they had children in schools. Because the schools in the surrounding counties were so bad, nobody would ever move into them. And they were bad. South Carolina people were paying tuition to come to school in North Carolina. In fact, I remember years ago when Kings Mountain was going to be consolidated with Cleveland County schools, that the people who opposed that most were people from South Carolina, because they'd been going to the Kings Mountain School, paying tuition to do it. So the change that has occurred from these schools being totally inadequate to them being fairly strong, and you have to include others in addition to the ones we have. Which if you're talking about South Carolina, you talk about Clover and Fort Mill school districts, they have outstanding achievement scores and a record. So that has been a huge, huge change in this region in the time that I've been here. Here's a chart on student achievement gap. This is a little busy, but if you can look closely, you can see that even though the gap still exists, it is beginning to narrow some. So the point is that here in a time where we are now in our 4th year in almost all these counties of cutting educational resources, we are at that very point in time in our history where all the major indicators are going in the right direction. Problem is, we don't know exactly why that happened, and we don't know exactly what impact these cuts will have on that. And that illustrates a point about needs and prevention and other parts of this, is that what you do this year may not have a return this year. It's way out here somewhere in terms of change that you're going to get. So this is child poverty, which is an associated one because, again, we've been looking at poverty for years, and this issue of children in poverty has bounced around the 15% mark for as long as I've been looking at it. We've had War on Poverty, we've had all kinds of programs. It moves a little occasionally, but it moves primarily because of the economy. You can see the last year that we have out of this 5-year period, 2009, it went up sharply. That's a response to the economy and the fact that we were in recession. That's a high number, 20%. If you start looking at kids, say 6 and less, who are in poverty, that number is higher. So this is an issue that we have, and of course, as we go through this and talk about other factors, you will see that if we could wave the magic wand and do away with poverty, some of us would go out of business in regards to these needs because they'd be met. We looked at every aspect of public education need. Particularly, we looked at those things that sometimes don't get the same attention as K-12. At the time the expert panel was discussing this was right smack in the middle of the time when the local school system, and particularly Mecklenburg County, was talking about doing away with, or at least decreasing funding for the pre-K program, Bright Beginnings, and the state was talking about doing away or decreasing program for Smart at 4 and Smart Start, or more at 4 and Smart Start. So that caused us to have a lot of discussion about pre-K education, and a belief among every panelist that spoke about it that that was a very important part of our system. Early child care for those from birth to 2 or 3 years old came up for a lot of discussion because of the new information about how people learn, how kids learn, how soon that starts, and how important those first 2 years are. We also talked a lot about what happens after high school, particularly what happens to people who don't go on to any other institution of higher, or any institution of higher learning. Employers will tell you that most of these graduates are not prepared for jobs. They're not job ready. They've had no experience for the most part, or little, and they're just not ready for that kind of experience. So it is important to think about what can we do for that 18 to 25-year-old group to get them ready to work and to help them find positions, because the economy will eventually depend on them being able to be productive folks. So those are the things we talked about. Here are some of the issues and concerns that we discussed, which are pretty much what I've just mentioned. The needs do differ as you go across that urban-rural continuum. In Anson County, the need is more than anything else is to get people and keep people in high school and get them graduated, because their graduation rate's under 50%. So that is a significant problem for them. Housing and poverty was the second area of need that we talked about. And of course, the reason that poverty became associated with this is that most people in the panels thought that if poverty could be solved, then the housing issue would pretty much go away. Probably not totally, but pretty much. This is a different measure of poverty, households in poverty. It's a little less than the one with children, but still, and this shows the total incidence rather than the percentage. We do that occasionally. In the full report, we do both. We need to do that because sometimes you get a percentage, you think, well, that's not much of a problem, 10%. But if you think about the population of this region, 1.5 million, 10% of a problem is 150,000 people, which makes it sound much different, and it is somewhat different. So this is incidence rather than percentage. This households receiving food stamps, that's the most sensitive thing we found to the recession. It went up more than anything else, increased 63% in the region, and almost 80, or a little over 87% in Mecklenburg County from 2005 to 2009 over this 5-year period. That's a significant increase. One of the questions that we talked about is, okay, if we have food stamps, food stamp program, why do we need all these food pantries in these counties? People can be qualified for this and get this. But it became evident very quickly, to some degree from people who run food pantries, but also from a larger group, that this is a supplemental program. You're not going to get enough out of this to feed you if you have no other source. And so it's reason why there is a duplication, it looks like a duplication at any rate, in programs. Unemployment rate, we all know what happened with that. The shocking thing is that almost never happens. And it almost never stays that way. We went from unemployment rate just over 4% not long ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. People were searching for anybody to hire. Union County had an unemployment rate 1 year, I think it's 2005, of 2.5%. That's full employment plus. We went to something between 10 and 12% within a year, and we're still there for the most part. You have seen the unemployment rate come down just a bit, but as you look at those data, it's not what we wanted to do to come down. It's not because of job creation. It's more because people quit looking. Some job creation, but nowhere near what we lost in that period of time. The other thing that we're beginning to look at nationally and locally, although the data are not easy to understand or not even clear, is that what about the number of people who are underemployed? People who are either working part-time and they want to work full-time, or they're working for a salary that was nowhere close to what they were making before, or what their expectation is. Obviously, that's a fairly sizable number. The other number is, what about the people who have simply given up? They're not looking, therefore they don't get counted in this unemployment thing. If you put those together, I think it would be safe to say that there would be at least 20,000 or 20% of the population of this region that are either unemployed, underemployed, or not looking for employment, which means they're not adding much wealth to this economy, and we need all the wealth we can get. So this is a sort of frightening prospect. It certainly has an impact on need in this region.